research physiologist is studying the effect of total cross-sectional area on diffusion of nutrients. Which of the following vessels are studied by the researcher and has the greatest total cross-sectional area in the circulatory system? When it comes to physiology questions, you want to be able to pick up which is the concept being tested in each and every question. And here we see that we are talking about the concept related to when blood leaves the heart, it's going to go through an artery, and then from the artery, it's going to go into what we call an arteriole. From the arteriole, we're going to divide into small capillaries. And when we're talking about these capillaries, this is going to play a really big important for exchange. And I'll talk about that more detail later. From the capillaries, we're going to go into what we call the venules. This is going to be deoxygenated blood because we already had the nutrient and gas exchange from the capillaries. From our venules, we're going to go into veins, and from the veins, remember this is going to be carrying deoxygenated blood towards the heart via the inferior vena cava. Now I'm going to discuss the high yield information regarding each type of blood vessel. Talking about the artery, you want to be aware that this is going to have the highest velocity. Flowing within our arteries, remember the equation for our velocity. It's going to be the flow over the total cross-sectional area. Because my arteries have got the smallest total cross-sectional area, this is going to mean that they're going to have the highest velocity. We're going to have the highest velocity of blood flow within the artery. My arterioles are going to have large amounts of smooth muscle. Therefore, they have the ability to contract with a smooth muscle contraction. This will narrow the lumen. And if you narrow the lumen, this allows us to have high resistance. Therefore, the arterioles will have the highest resistance to blood flow. Therefore, they will play a big role in controlling blood pressure, depending whether they are contracted or relaxed. Within our bodies and our blood vessels, we're going to have a high amount of capillaries. Therefore, our capillaries are going to have the highest cross-sectional area. If we go back to our equation where we said the velocity of blood flow is equal to the flow over the total cross-sectional area, because we have a high amount of total cross-sectional area of capillaries, they're going to have the lowest velocity. This is going to be important because this allows more time for nutrients exchange at the level of the capillaries. This is where we're going to be having nutrients exchange to muscles and our organ systems. So it's important to know that this is going to be where we're going to have the exchange. The key important things to know about our veins is that they're going to have the highest compliance. And remember, compliance is going to be the change in volume over the change in pressure. Another important fact to know is that our veins are going to have the highest capacitance. What we need to know about capacitance is that you can imagine if someone is going from supine position to standing, when we're going to go into standing position, our veins have got an ability to hold large amounts of blood. This is what we call capacitance. 70% of our blood can be held within the veins. So it's important to know that these are the main two properties we want to be aware regarding the veins. Going back to the question, therefore, which of the following vessels studied by the researcher has the greatest total cross-sectional area in the circulatory system? Which blood vessel contains the largest percentage of blood volume? The veins are going to contain the largest percentage of blood volume. This is because the veins are going to have the highest capacitance, which means they have the ability to store more blood. The small veins and large veins can accommodate 20 times more blood than resistance vessels. In a patient suffering from anemia, what happens to the viscosity, resistance, and the blood flow? Let's talk about this in a bit more detail. In order to answer the question, we have to understand the concept behind this equation. The flow is equal to the change in pressure over resistance. We need to understand that flow is going to be inversely related to resistance. We have to understand the factors that are going to be affecting resistance. Resistance is going to have a direct relationship with viscosity and length. We are going to have an inverse relationship with r, the radius, to the power of 4. A patient with anemia is going to have a decrease in viscosity. Since we have a direct relationship between viscosity and resistance, therefore we're also going to see a decrease in resistance. Since we have an inverse relationship between the flow and the resistance, we are going to see an increase in flow. Which factor has the biggest effect on blood flow Q within a blood vessel? Is it A, viscosity, the length of the blood vessel, or C, the radius of the blood vessel? Looking at the equation once again, we want to find out which factor will have the biggest effect on blood flow Q. If I look at viscosity and length, they're going to have a direct relationship with resistance. However, their effect is going to be multiplied by 8. Let's take a look at the radius. The radius is going to be raised to its 4th power. Therefore, you're going to multiply the number by itself 4 times. Let's say, for example, let's say viscosity is 5. And let's say the radius is also 5, right? We're going to say 8 multiplied by the viscosity 5 is equal to 40. And we say radius to the power of 4, therefore 5 to the power of 4. Therefore we say radius will be equal to 5. Therefore, a change in radius will have a greater effect on the flow. That's a really important fact you want to be aware of. the best answer here would be the change in radius. A patient with the atherosclerotic plaque causing narrowing of the coronary arteries, what happens to resistance and flow within the blood vessel? This patient will have a decrease in radius multiplied to the power of 4. They will have an increase in resistance, and therefore they're going to have decrease in flow. Therefore, the tissue that's going to be distal to this narrowing may be at risk to ischemia due to the decrease in the flow. Feel free to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are interested in registering for the high yield reviews, please contact Med Tutors.